What is good, guys? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one, I'm going to be breaking down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's going on with the Chinese sales data thus far, what the economic data is suggesting for tomorrow and also for Tuesday, and all of this could affect Tesla share prices. To give you guys my price predictions. Before I break anything down, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Weeble link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 6 free stocks. You deposit $500 into the account, you're guaranteed 20 free stocks plus 6 months of level 2 data, and putting in $25,000 or more guarantees you 70 free stocks plus 12 months of level 2 data. The offer ends in just 8 days, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, let's break down what's going on with the market. Tesla was up about 0.49% for the day, holding up quite nicely on Friday. But the question is, what's going to happen to Tesla as we approach tomorrow? What's going to happen as we approach Tuesday, in my honest opinion? What pieces of data should we be looking out for? So, as a reminder for the whole market, this could affect Tesla to some extent. Tomorrow is going to be Monday, the day before CPI, right? Because CPI comes out on Tuesday before market open. We have some data coming out on Monday, tomorrow at 11 o'clock a.m. We have the consumer inflationary expectations report. This could cause some volatility, but nothing that insane in my opinion. Then at 11:30, we have the 3-year note auction and the 6-month bill auction coming out, giving us some information about how these auctions are going to be affected by the interest rates. Then on top of that, at 1 p.m., we have the 10-year note auction, the 3-month bill auction, all coming out. This basically suggests that we should be prepared for some volatility at 11 o'clock a.m. during that hour, and also at 1 p.m. in case these note auctions cause somewhat of a move. Now, I personally am not expecting it to be a massive move like what you see when Jerome Powell speaks. We could see the market kind of like pop or drop or do something like that. So don't be too surprised if you see something during these hours. But besides that, there's not really anything else coming out for tomorrow. It's going to be a very quiet day in terms of data because the market's going to be getting prepared for Tuesday. On Tuesday, right, we have CPI coming out an hour before the market opens. This is going to be very, very important because it's also going to dictate the Fed's decision on Wednesday. Because on Wednesday, we also have the FOMC meeting and Jerome Powell giving his speech and such during the Fed press conference. So we have a lot going on for Tuesday and Wednesday. So once again, with CPI coming out, make sure you're ready for that. See what the numbers look like. In my video from yesterday, for Saturday, if you want to look at it, I talked about how there could be a squeeze on Tuesday because CPI is most likely going to be, in my opinion, below expectations or very close to expectations, if not lower. And I brought a lot of data by looking at crude futures, looking at the oil prices, retail gas prices, and such, that all suggested the same thing, that we're not going to get a bad CPI. CPI is likely going to be decent, and this could help the market at least pop one more time. So once again, guys, if you want more information about why I say that, why I do favor the upside for Tuesday, you can watch my previous video, but for now, I'm just going to talk about more data. Something else that's worth mentioning would be the fact that every single Friday, we keep seeing all these puts on SPY being opened, and also they're being held right now. This was initially for hedging, and yet this is working against a lot of those retail individuals, maybe even some institutions and such. So with that being said, this is still not looking the best in to some extent, because when you think about it, if people keep shorting the market like crazy, we keep seeing the market squeeze on Fridays, and it may just continue on this trend. Now, we need to see data like CPI and like the Fed kind of like help the market out, not like raise rates again, not be like too hawkish, to give the market an extra amount of leverage. But so far, I think there's a very good chance of that happening. And we'll be watching just for extra confirmation. But I just want to note, okay, that for this coming Friday, we have 4.5 million puts expiring. We have just under 2 million calls expiring, a 2.44 puts to call ratio. The majority of people have puts, and this makes me wonder, are we going to see another short squeeze for Friday? Then for the week after that, we have a 4.35 puts to call ratio, 600,000 puts, and just under 140,000 calls. Sorry, it's right here. I think I accidentally missed it, but right here, this is where it's going to be. And then for the week after that, I mean, we have over close to a million of the puts expiring. Then we have like about just over 600,000 calls expiring. So it just goes to show the majority positions keeping the puts week in and week out, and we're continuing to see shorts get squeezed. As far as Tesla goes, we had one piece of news that was worth mentioning because there were other pieces of news about the Cybertruck, which I just didn't find that relevant. I went over the majority of the news, especially on like Friday and also on Thursday, involving the unions, involving what's going on with like Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. They're continuing to unionize, and they may even just, continue to demand an agreement from Tesla. There was that news that came out, not to mention more news about the things that Wedbush has said about Tesla, other analysts, and then other pieces of news about the Chinese data and such. But one thing that's good is that the Tesla increased the EV retail sales, but the exports were down just a bit in November 2023. But overall, the data was still very good for Tesla. So don't let this headline get the best of you. So we can see, according to the Chinese Passenger Car Association, the data has basically shown us that. Hold on one second. Uh, Sorry about that, guys. I think my computer kind of froze for a second. Sorry about that. So right here, out of 82,000 Teslas, the Model 3 and the Model Y has made up the large majority of the sales. It's up 5% year over year, while exports make only a small part. They're actually down about 55%, which is not that bad. At the same time, this is just based off the data. We don't know 100% sure if that's like that bad or anything like that, but Chinese retail sales remain strong and the overall sales are still quite good. The results after 11 months of the year are still very positive. You guys can see it right here on the charts. You can actually see that we have a lot of strength right here from November 2023 when it comes to like the sales in China plus exports. This is just based off like registrations and such. Retail sales in China are looking very strong as well. If you look at this big increase compared to what we saw last year, not to mention what we saw back in October. And then if you look at the exports, so far this is just based off like what the reports are showing. This may not be 100% accurate, but we are seeing a little decrease in exports. We'll see if that continues. But so far, it's not bad. The overall data is good as long as their sales are high. Tesla is going to be just fine, and we could see Tesla just continue to break records. Now, on top of all of this, I just want to mention that the volume was 103 million. That is close to what the average volume was, very close to it, not exact, but close. And on top of that, we have Wedbush saying that Tesla is going to outperform. They're reiterating that Tesla should outperform the market. And we're going to be looking at the price price ratio as this might start increasing as Tesla starts to outperform. Mondays have a tendency of being green 53% of the time, and that's pretty much it for the data. Everything else is about the same. What do I think the market's going to do? Well, honestly, guys, like I said earlier, tomorrow we have some data coming out. It's going to be very minor. And then Tuesday is when we have CPI. I just want to mention that typically, right before CPI, we tend to see the market consolidate, not make major moves. We tend to see some sideways price action. So we might see something like that going into tomorrow. Perhaps the first 1 to 2 hours will be more volatile. Then we might just see lots of chop, and the market could just be preparing for CPI. We might see a lot of hedging, we might see a lot of repositioning amongst these institutions and hedge funds, and I think that that's likely what's going to happen. So I wouldn't be surprised if Tesla remains tight for some time before we get a big move on Tuesday, and I think that Tuesday is going to dictate which way the market ends up going. But there's a good chance we might see some bullish price action on Tuesday because of the fact that the data looks pretty good. Once again, I went over the data in my video from Saturday. But now this is what I'm seeing on Tesla. You can see we're getting rejected off this white trend line for now. We're also holding this yellow trend line, which is our historical support down here. I had to adjust it a little bit based off how it was like bouncing, but this is what it looks like on the hourly time frame. You can see the yellow trend line just keeps on holding. So it's very simple. I think there's a very good chance that Tesla is going to kind of consolidate, come back to the yellow trend line at this 240 area, 241 actually. We also have 240 as support. If we lose that, I mean, 238 is the next technical level. But I think there's a good chance we just kind of consolidate for a bit. We get tighter and tighter and tighter. If we bring up the Bollinger Bands, you can see that Tesla has a tendency of getting tight before big moves. So an example is like right here, it got a little tight before it broke out. This is where it got tight. Also right here, let me show you this one more time. Before the break to the upside, right, Tesla got really tight right here for 2 days. This is more like a day and a half, and then it broke out. So we might see something very similar where Tesla just gets tighter and tighter. Then we might break out very soon. I think there's a very good chance of that potentially happening, and I lean more in favor of that. With that being said, I just want to add that the big move should be coming on Tuesday, and we'll be watching to see how that affects Tesla. The daily time frame is looking quite good on Tesla. It is still holding up in range trading. The MACD is still favoring the bulls a little bit more, and we're actually holding up quite well thus far. On the weekly time frame, we're actually getting very close to a bullish cross on the PPO. This would lead to this imbalance to get filled up all the way up to this 250 area, and eventually even higher levels towards the end of the year. So could Tesla bounce more? Yes. The weekly looks a bit more bullish. There's a good chance of a little bit more upside. It looks like it wants to reach that 250 target at least very, very soon again. So what I see from Tesla is this: from a technical standpoint, we might just see it get tight and eventually break out of this pennant and retest this blue trend line of resistance, which we have historically. We'll be watching that very carefully. When you zoom out of the charts, you could also argue that Tesla's in a giant like wedge at the same time, where it's like uptrending. It doesn't really matter. It's still holding up nicely, and there's a good chance of some more upside. I also want to add that when you zoom out of Tesla, on the weekly, once again, the overall structure is bullish on the chart. This structure looks bullish. We have a nice inverse head and shoulders like pattern. We're holding up, we're consolidating, we're trying to break out. So I anticipate some consolidation for Monday, then a breakout on Tuesday. I find that very likely for Tesla. And I think something similar may develop on SPY. Looking at SPY real quick, okay, SPY has, it's currently like just above 460. If we break and keep pushing up and we try to get back above 461. We have some resistance at 462. Our support is going to be 460, and we have strong support also at 458 if we lose 460. So, what do I think SPY is going to do? I think it's just going to remain range bound for some time. It could push a little bit when we open, come back down, just continue to trade sideways around 460. Regardless of where we close, it doesn't really matter whether it's red or not. It doesn't matter because the real move is going to happen on Tuesday. And I think that we might just consolidate tomorrow. We could pop and drop in the morning, just continue to trade sideways in this range. I think that that's what it's most likely going to do. Then expect a breakout, most likely by Tuesday. As I mentioned earlier, guys, I think that SPY is going to hit this 467 target because when you zoom out and look at the weekly time frame, it's looking quite bullish. The weekly has a nice cup and handle. We have a bullish looking weekly candlestick, and we managed to close above 460, which is a very good sign. Once we break 462, our next target is going to be 467. I think it wants to get up there. So what I think is going to happen is we're going to consolidate for a bit, then make a big move after CPI. There's a good chance CPI is going to be decent based off what I saw in my previous video, what I reported on Saturday, and this could help SPY eventually make its way up to 467 over the next 1 to 2 weeks. Could even happen as soon as Tuesday, depending on CPI, but just to be safe, we'll have to see. So that's my view of SPY. Bullish overall. Consolidation tomorrow, then maybe a breakout on Tuesday, depending on CPI. I do lean a bit more in that direction, though. For the QQQ, it's the same thing. I think this thing might consolidate a bit. We have like a rising wedge-like structure on the hourly time frame, but it could actually backtest this 391 area, which is where we got the breakout from. We could backtest 391, come back up, just trade sideways for a bit, and then maybe break out even more later on. If we invalidate this rising wedge, it could push up and get close to 400. But I think a big move is going to happen after CPI. CPI could launch this thing closer to 400, so watch it very carefully. And we have a nice rising wedge-like structure. On Nvda stock, I just want to mention that the stock looks bullish to me because, first off, this wick formed right over here. This wick formed on the 6th of December. We got this big drop to the downside, and since then, we've been on a nice uptrend after that. We've broken this wick, we've broken this resistance showing signs of an uptrend, and we have an imbalance to fill at this 458 area. So Nvidia could come back down to test this blue trend line around the very like low 470s, 471. That's going to be fine, but then I think it's going to bounce and start uptrending and trying to break out towards 480 plus to 482. So could we drop a little bit then start breaking out? Yes, I think it's going to uptrend, and I think it's going to eventually make its way up to 482 at least. If that breaks, I could even see 487 to retest this wick, this high up here. So Nvidia has a nice double bottom like structure. The overall structure is holding up nicely. And then when we zoom out a little bit, so let me just show you something on Nvidia. When you zoom out on the weekly time frame, the weekly looks a little bullish on Nvidia finally. After so much selling, we're finally looking kind of good on the weekly. There's a good chance Nvidia is going to try pushing up higher, could drop a little bit to backtest this blue trend line, then bounce up and start pushing for 482 plus by Tuesday or Wednesday, in my honest opinion. Finally, for the last one, I'm going to go over on TradingView. I just want to mention that Aapl is looking quite decent. We got a nice rising wedge-like structure, but don't forget that when you zoom out of Aapl, let me show you something. Aapl has tight resistance at 197, so you want to be very careful up there. We look bullish on the weekly, but watch 197 as tight resistance. We'll see if we could break that and smash to like 200 or not. I think Apple is going to try to break all-time highs, but we'll have to see how it reacts to this resistance just to be safe. So watch it come down. Watch this 195 support. We might kind of like test this support, try to bounce off this, and then start uptrending more and more. Watch this 197 zone as resistance. If we break this, we could get very close to 200. I'm going to be watching that. I think that it's going to come down to backtest 195 and trade sideways first. Then Tuesday is going to be the day we break out, make an attempt to break out most likely. I don't know for sure. It depends on CPI, of course, but that's what I predict is going to happen. And then we'll see how it reacts to 197 if we break it or not. We could break it, but then just be a little careful since we're going to be hitting new territory and it's going to be a little tight when it comes to resistance above 197. All right, that's it for the main five I'd typically go over. Let's just go over a couple of others real quick. So for SoFi, I think the chart's looking bullish on the weekly. We're going to eventually make our way up to 9.46 to test our 200 EMA. But before it happens on an intraday basis, we could see this thing actually come back down towards $8, come back down towards 7.93, then bounce. So I could see a little drop in bounce, but I think the overall structure is looking a bit more bullish. When you zoom out, you can see we've been consolidating quite a bit, and I think that SoFi is going to try to hold up. So look for a drop and pop on it. On the IWM, the Russell 2000, I'm very bullish for this for 2024. I think that the small caps have a lot of activity coming up. We have a bullish crossover on the weekly. You're going to be looking for this 190 target. We could come back to retest the 185s, consolidate a bit, and then eventually break out higher for 190. And I think that's what's going to happen. So a little drop and then just like consolidation around 185 and then a bounce and a push up for like 190. I think is very probable. Microsoft looks bullish on the weekly. We talked about a little pullback on Microsoft. It did come down to 362. So it did technically pull back, but now it's looking bullish on the weekly. So look for an attempt to come like this. I'm going to be looking for 377, I believe it is, as our next level. So it looks a little bullish right now. I was looking at 375, and then I think 377 is next, like right about here. So it could actually come up a little bit more, retest 375 and then 377, come back down to 375 and then start pushing up higher. I think that's eventually going to make its way up to the 380s all over again. So watch it trade sideways between 375 to 377, go back and forth for some time, maybe tomorrow. Then watch it break out possibly by Tuesday and watch for 380 plus. For AMD, this chart looks pretty decent. It has popped a lot. It might actually want to cool its RSI just a little bit more. Could backtest this wick right over here at 127, then bounce. But I still think that it's not done just yet because we have that resistance to watch for at 132. The weekly looks kind of bullish and it hasn't really met 132 yet. So it could drop and then push for 132, and we'll see if that breaks. If it breaks, it could turn more bullish, but we'll just have to wait and see. For the VIX, it's still looking very weak. The weekly is not looking the best. There's no sign of this thing bouncing yet, and it's been stuck around $12. 12 could just hold for the time being, so we'll be watching that very carefully. For the SQQQ, it's the same thing. It was trying to break up, but now it failed. It's looking a little bearish on the 4 hours, so this is like a bullish signal for the markets. The dollar has tried to break out. It's actually showing more strength than other tickers, but it's failing to break the 200 EMA, so we're going to be watching that as well. Coinbase, overall, I'm bullish on Coinbase. I think it could cool off on the RSI to backtest 143.5. But overall, when you look at the weekly, I think 168 is coming. I think it's going to try to get up to this 200 EMA. Looks bullish on the weekly. 168 is my price target on Coinbase for the next couple of weeks. Google is a little tricky because I see it coming back down a little bit. I'm not sure if it's going to be a bigger drop to fill its gap or not. Basically, let me actually show you the daily chart. First, the daily looks like it's going to retest 135 and bounce, or if we lose 135, depending on the news and such, then we could actually fill the gap down to 133 and bounce. So either 135 then bounce, most likely, depending on the 20 EMA test. If we lose it, it could fill the gap to 133 and then bounce. It's got to be one of those two. So a little drop in bounce is most likely what's going to happen to Google. The structure is looking bullish overall. So 135 and bounce or 133 and bounce, one of those two is most likely going to happen depending on the news. But I think that it's about to turn bullish on the daily, looking at the PPO overall. Right, so a little drop in bounce is fine. It could still be more bullish than bearish overall. I think that's going to happen, but watch and see what happens and where it tries to bounce at once it gets that test. Amazon's kind of tricky. You know, they gave us a head and shoulders like structure, but it hasn't played out yet. There's no sign of it playing out yet, so we'll have to see how CPI affects this. Now, the weekly still looks bullish. The weekly still looks bullish. Got a bullish crossover on the PPO. We might actually break 150 soon. It might backtest 145, then try to break up for 150 plus. So it still looks bullish to me. Meta looks bullish on the weekly. I think it's going to try to make its way back up to 340 plus. Watch it come down to 328 and bounce for about 340. Anyways, that's it for this one. Thank you all so much for listening. Hopefully this video was helpful for tomorrow. I think we might see some consolidation. Then we might see a nice breakout on Tuesday. We'll see what happens on Tuesday with CPI, but the data I have has suggested that we're likely going to get a decent CPI. I went over all of this on my video from Saturday. Once you watch that video, it's going to help you out. If you're interested in watching it, make sure you check it out. And with that being said, have a great day, enjoy the weekend, and I'll see you guys tomorrow morning for the next video update. Thank you, and peace out.